Chris Lee and Blake Lovell here from Southeastern 14. We're going to break down the basketball action from Saturday. We had 7 games in the SEC. Let's start with the headliner. That is Kentucky going to Tuscaloosa, beating Alabama 66-55. Oscar Tshiebwe with a double-double, which it's almost understood anymore. It's just what are the final numbers going to be? In this case, it was 10 and 15. Ty Washington was really good, had 15 points. Damian Collins, who doesn't play much due to injury, I thought looked good in that game. 10 points in 9 minutes. And then we'll get into Alabama in a minute, but let's start with Kentucky, Blake, and your takeaways on the Cats from this weekend.
Yeah, kind of what we said going in. I mean, I would have thought it'd been a little bit closer of a game, but I mean, I just thought Kentucky was the better team right now, and I think we had talked about that. They're just a team that, yeah, you can look at their games away from home this year overall and pick out some flaws here and there, and they've lost some of those games, but at the same time, they played a lot better here recently. Just pointing out, we talked about the game at Kansas and all of that, and it's a different team, and they're just really good. And, I think exactly what we said going in was, thing about Kentucky is even when one of your players isn't on, you've got 4 or 5 other guys who can score points and make a difference. And so that's where, Severe Wheeler plays 33 minutes, doesn't score, but you got 5 other guys that can score in double figures, and Davion Mintz almost got there with 7. So that just shows you, what you're dealing with this team. I think they can win it all. They're that good. And I mean, the takeaway is that, Kentucky is not the Kentucky of last year. They're not the Kentucky even, I think, of some of those teams we've seen in recent years that have maybe been a little bit more inconsistent. This team's been pretty consistent for pretty much the entire way at this point. They've just gotten better and better, and I think they are set up in a very nice spot here as they continue to move forward. Just because I just keep looking at them, and to hold that Alabama team to 55 points, it's not just about the offense; it's about what they can do on defense too. And that they were really good here.
Someone brought up this weekend where this team stands since the national title team, which has been, 11 years now. That's crazy. I think I might like this bunch as much as any team he's had since then. Is that wrong? Am I just short-sighted with my memory here?
You're asking the wrong person. I couldn't tell you 15, 14, 13. I just, even watching all these games, it's still like I just don't – placing a team to a year for me is impossible.
They had the 38-1 team.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe memory is –
I think that team was better than this team. But
yeah, I probably was. I watched this team, and I feel like I'm more scared to play this one than some of those. I could be wrong. Again, This is 8 years of time that's elapsed or whatever it's been. Not that many, but
I guarantee you, Kentucky fans could probably tell.
They would know.
They could reel off every single. But I think when I'm looking at 14 different teams, I'm thinking, man, I can't even remember. I remember what last year's Kentucky team was, and I remember the year before. But it's I think the 3-year mark to me is where the window closes in terms of what my memory is, unless we're talking about a team that goes 38-1 or, the national championship team. So yeah, I think it's. I mean, but look, that's why the discussion's being had, because this team's really good and. It's understandable, and I think that we always say it, and I'm not sure why. This is why we overreact so much in November and early December sometimes, and I don't know why people fall for it every single year, especially with a team like Kentucky. They always get better. Throw out last year. Just I don't know why. No one should be just leaning on anything from last year anymore. That was just one of the most complete, random, weird results probably ever in college basketball for that team to do what they did last year. But this is what they've done since John Calipari's been there. They have gotten better in January, February, and once March is here, they are right there with a chance to be exactly where they want to be, getting to a Final Four, winning a national championship. So this is just what they do. So I think, again, that's why even I can go back to when we were talking in November. People are like, well, they're winning, but who are they beating? And all. Well, it's eventually, your talent and just the makeup of your team takes over, and that's what's happened here. And yeah, they're just getting better, and they're a very, very fun team to watch.
Yeah, I'll strike that comment from the record. I need to go back and look it up. I'll just say my point is they're really, really good. I mean,
Yes.
you have teams. Yeah, again, we've said this for a couple of weeks. You have two teams in this league that you watch and say could easily see that team winning the national title. I'm not going to just bag on Alabama here, but sometimes you have like a resounding image from a game, and mine's not so much an image, but it's a sound. And you know what it is?
What's that?
It's the sound of the ball hitting the back rim and coming out time and time again. Alabama they could not make shots. 3 of 30 from three. And I know they're better than this, but at one point I think Jimmy Dykes just said, look, the difference in this team this year and last year, and we would add defense too, but they just can't. They're not as good of a shooting team, and I really think sometimes the answers with Alabama are that simple.
Yeah, we've said it from week one. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you can just kind of tell. I mean, it's like since the week one of SEC play started, you're trying to compare all these teams, and we've said two things time and time again, in probably every single video we've made. Defense, 3-point shooting. They're not as good in either area as they were last year, and those are two big keys to winning a basketball game in this era, and they're just not as good. And yes, like when doesn't matter who you play. If you go 3 of 30 from three, you're not going to win. Especially when you are trying to get all your points either from two or from the free throw line, and you're trying to do it against a Kentucky team like this on defense. So it just didn't, it just didn't work out for Alabama here. They just didn't make shots, but that's exactly what we have thought about this team. They don't make enough outside shots, and you just can't compare it to last year. They don't have that gear from three. Now they have that next gear in terms of their guards being able to penetrate and get to the rim, create some shots elsewhere, get to the foul line, those kind of things. But they don't have just that, make 3 threes in a span of 15 seconds and all of a sudden the game is just completely flipped. Like they could do that last year. That's just that was how good they were with Petty and all these other guys being able to knock down shots. But this team's just not as consistent from that. And, here they are at 4-6, but yet they're 4-6 in the league. They're still 19th in KenPom, and I still look at this team as though they are a team that I probably would not want to play in a tournament setting if they're a 7, 8, 9, 10 type seed. Just because you know what they're capable of. But it's just, we're starting to see now that the consistency hasn't been there. We've said that from the start. They don't shoot it as well. Their defense wasn't bad here. It's just like you're just only watching that game, I'm thinking, they're actually defending pretty well. Kentucky made some runs, but I think that was just Kentucky hitting some shots. But it's like you have to hit your own shots. And when you have Shackelford and Quinterly combining for 13 points against a team like Kentucky, that's not enough to win. And I think that the one thing Alabama still has going for it is that it still played the toughest, schedule in the country. It managed to get one of these wins of these three against Baylor, Auburn, and Kentucky. Managed to beat Baylor, which I know Baylor's, maybe slipping a little bit, but still, that's a great win. So I think Alabama is going to be interesting to watch moving forward because they're not really a team anymore that I think you can count on to just look at a game on paper and say that's an automatic win. Yeah. And that's where, the Georgia game, the Missouri game comes in, but I think that's where also like this Kentucky game comes in and says, well, man, that's 3 of 30 really stands out. And now it's like, all right, they turn around and go to Ole Miss on Wednesday. I just, that confidence factor in them is becoming tougher and tougher. And yet I still think they're a team that, given the right matchup, given the right draw, they're probably not a team that, you necessarily want to see in a tournament setting just because they have the tools. They're not as sort of, sharp as they were last year. And I don't know if they're going to get there. They have at times, but we'll see, I guess.
Well, and to be fair, sometimes you don't look as sharp when you're playing the schedule they have, which
right.
I'm really interested. I don't know if there's like a measure to compare strength of schedule from years to years, but I'm really interested to see when the year's said and done, like how their schedule stacks up against everybody else's. They'll probably be number one in the country still, but I mean, like, was this number one strength of schedule tougher than, other number one strengths of schedule in past years? I don't know how you determine that, but that's what we're looking at with Alabama because they're just almost never a let up.
And we had that discussion, but I think going into this 3-game stretch, we
Yeah.
said, I think after the Georgia game, we're like, if you look back at this schedule, not just the toughest maybe this year, but how does it compare to the toughest schedules in recent years? And I think it's still a very valid, potential claim to look at that. But of course, it depends on how some of these teams finish out their season.
Yeah,
So,
they played one team outside the top half of Ken Palm, and that's Georgia, which they had to play by virtue of being in the league. So, and Georgia may end up inside the top half before it's all said and done. We'll get to them in a minute. Charles Bediako for Alabama is 4-4. The rest of the team is 14-60 from the field. 14-9 for Alabama. 1-5 on the road is problematic, but the big wins are banked. Enough about Alabama. Kentucky, the issue with Kentucky was big wins a couple weeks ago. The Cats are starting to bank those. I don't know what North Carolina on a neutral floor will mean at the end of the year, but certainly Tennessee at home, Kansas and Alabama on the road are going to carry some weight and still some opportunities to come. Let's move on to Auburn. And we were both way off on this. We thought Auburn would go and romp at Georgia. It did not. It had to hang on for dear life and win at the end thanks to Kendall Green. We did warn that last time Auburn was in this spot between two big games with the game that it should win going away, and that game I think was on the road too. It was that Auburn had to hang on for dear life. That happened again. Auburn comes off the big win last week with the road trip to Arkansas coming next. And, give credit to Georgia because Georgia played really well. But, I don't think most of us expected Auburn, needing a shot in the final 2 seconds to win this thing.
no, not at all. I mean, it's, yeah, we didn't really expect that. And, I know there's been a lot of people on both sides that have had their opinions about Auburn in terms of, look what this team has done on the road. They haven't played as well on the road. But in my opinion, if that's the best claim you have to a team like this, and yet they still win those games, I think it's like if you're picking apart a team for not winning by enough on the road, I think that's a sign of a really good team. And I mean, you're going to have some of these games. We've said this before, whether it's Auburn, whether it's anyone, you're going to have some games like this throughout the span of a 30-something game season, and you're going to get everybody's best shot. We've said that many times. And that's the deal here. They're getting everyone's best shot, especially when they go on the road, because it's a different atmosphere. I know there were some people, and I'm going to laugh a little bit at this, like there were some people saying this is going to be a home game for Auburn. There are a lot of Georgia fans that were making some noise there. So I
There
think you
were.
give them, I mean, you got to give them credit too. I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit was, you know, give Georgia fans credit. I mean, they show up here. I know it's a big game. It's probably different if you're playing someone else near the bottom of the league, but they showed up for this one, and that lended itself to more of a better atmosphere for them at home. And yeah, I mean they stepped up. We compared the previous matchup that between teams like this in terms of what it looked like and how they played, and we said, look, if you want to point out some possible things that could change how this game plays out, for starters, Cario Quindo did not play in the first game. We pointed that out, and he goes for 25 here and played really, really well. I mean, he was, someone, I think he was on the floor 36, 37 minutes, something like that. He was a big difference for Georgia. And clearly, when he's on the floor, they have a much better chance, especially against a team like this, that you kind of know what you're getting. There were just a lot. I mean, I think look, I realize all the attention here is going to be on Auburn. Everyone's going to try to pick apart Auburn for why they, are able to escape yet again against, probably the two teams, Missouri and Georgia, that a lot of people would put at the, near the bottom of the league. But I think you got to give Georgia some credit too here. I mean, they played pretty well, and I think again you have to kind of look at that. And we've said, there have been some times where Georgia has played well in some of these games. The score has been a little deceiving. They've at least gotten better in some areas, but yet I also understand the people who want to point out and say, well, this is the number one team in the country, and it shouldn't be this close against a team like Georgia. But at the end of the day, it goes back to what Bruce Pearl said after the Missouri game. You survive in advance, and Auburn survives again. And yeah, they're 22-1, and I have a hard time picking apart too much about a team that's 22-1 and 10-0 in the league, and all that, because they are probably going to be entering one of their biggest games in the season on Tuesday night. So,
okay, I'm not going to say beat a dead horse, but I'm going to bring up something again. Still don't understand computer rankings with them. Auburn 7th in Ken Palm. A one-loss team. Everybody in front of them has lost more. Their strength of schedule is harder than everybody in front of them other than Purdue in Ken Palm. The luck factor, which is what explains a discrepancy between what you did and what you should have done based on points. In other words, if you win or lose an inordinate amount of close games, the computers will pick up on that and dock you for it, a credit for you accordingly. They're 145 in luck, which is about average.
yeah.
I continue to be stumped by the computers in Auburn. But anyway, it is what it is. Anything else on Auburn before we move on to another one here?
I mean, again, it's like if you can get a win like that with Jabari Smith scoring 7 points, not having his best game. Walker Kessler probably didn't have his best game either at 10 points, 29 minutes. He probably got a couple fouls he didn't want to get. I think that's it. I mean, I understand the reason, again, we have to pick these kind of things apart when it comes to, you kind of look at it and say, all right, why are they only winning at Missouri by 1? Why are they only winning at Georgia by 2? I think it's pretty simple. As we said, they're going to get everybody's best shot. You're telling me they're not going to get Arkansas's best shot on Tuesday night? And that's a much better team. And we've said it. Like, they could very well lose to Arkansas on Tuesday night. And we'll break that game down in our next video. But it's like, when you're the number one team, how many times have we seen this before in college basketball? Especially, I think, in recent years. And, of course, there's no way to quantify that, comparing it to past eras or years. But look at how many teams it seems like, in recent years, and obviously take last year out of it with that Gonzaga team. But, man, it's just like we look up and it's like a top 5 team on the roads getting beat here and there. And it's just, man, that's the game. That's the sport. And I think it's fun to kind of see how these games play out. And, it's something to kind of watch, just all, especially the top teams when they go on the road. It's going to be such a different environment, and there's going to be some games where you've just got to pull one, out of where. And that's what that's what Auburn's done here, especially against Georgia, against Missouri. As we said, those two teams felt like they were in great spots with a minute to go, 30 seconds to go. I thought this one, I'll just be honest, like,
I thought Georgia was going to take this one.
Well, I was going to say, like, I thought the same thing towards the end of the Missouri game, and now you're doing, looking at the same here with Georgia, and I know people are pointing out the no call on the.
I didn't get that. I watched it live, and I thought I must be taking crazy pills, but you look at Twitter and listen to things later, and I wasn't the only one who saw it. I don't. That was something, wasn't it? I mean, it was a block or a charge, but it was something, right?
As a former high school referee, let me just tell you, those are the kind of calls that that keep you up at night, in terms of you're told one thing about how to enforce things here and there, and then you're also told another thing when it comes to those kind of scenarios in terms of final play of the game. We've all heard, let them play, let the players decide the game and all this other stuff. But yeah, that's one I'm sure that's probably still being discussed, but. Still, I mean, at the end of the day, Auburn's 22-1, and this was a great game though. Like, this was a better game than Missouri game. I'll say that. That Missouri game was that was a grind, but this one was a very, this was a fun, kind of more entertaining game, and yeah, it's, for Georgia, we'll talk more about it in the future, but it's like, man, it's like Georgia's. I don't know what's next for Georgia, and we'll talk more, but it's just like. Give them credit, man. They're getting. I think they're playing better. I know the Arkansas game is kind of, you get beat by 26 at home, then you turn around and almost beat Auburn at home. I get it. But you're going to have that kind of variation when you're a team like this. But they're getting better. I don't know if that's going to mean anything by the time the season rolls around, because at the end of the day, it is about wins, and they just don't have a lot of those right now.
Who's going streaking, Blake?
Yeah, they've been streaking for a while. It's
8
kind
in
of
a
cold
row.
outside, so. Yeah, it's.
I've switched streaking teams on you here. I'm sorry.
Oh, Who are you talking about?
I'm
Are you
talking
talking
about
Arkansas?
Arkansas now.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought you were talking
Oh,
about. They've been
sorry.
streaking for a while.
Auburn's
Yeah,
been streaking too,
that's
so
what I said. They've been streaking in the snow for quite a bit,
yeah.
so it's I wouldn't advise that, but yeah, it's been a
Have you ever
little
done
cold
that?
outside too. No, I have not, but
I've not either.
Listen, Arkansas has though, and this is what we said last year. It's so funny. I remember back to this conversation we had, whenever they're in the middle of this losing streak. What did we say? We said, you know what, different team, but think back to last year, right? They lost 4 or 5, and they just couldn't figure it out. And what do you know? Then they went streaking. They finished the season winning. What do you know? 8 in a row. And just the regular season winning 8 in a row, and they won their first game in the conference tournament. But yeah, I mean, Arkansas is just playing better. There's no other way to put it. They're really good right now. And, I think that's, like we said, this was kind of that turning point for them to where their schedule now starts to really take off. And for them to get this win against Mississippi State, this was a grind for them to kind of be able to pull this one out. And I don't know, again, for anyone that watched this game, I saw one of the craziest shots I've seen in a long time in college basketball.
Yep.
And you know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, well,
with this.
and look, let me, before you go there, that was one of the rare moments that I think fans of both teams are screaming at the TV at the same time. Mississippi State fans might have done it twice, because here's the thing: Arkansas's got the ball Arkansas's got the ball up 4, and there's 40-something seconds left. And if you let the shot clock play out, it's going to be inside single digits or close to it. And I'm like, that's really hard to pull off without fouling.
Yeah.
And they were making no effort to foul, and it's playing right in Arkansas's lap. And Chris Likes, he pulls up and takes a 3 with 20 seconds on the shot clock.
So I had to pull
and
this
hits
up.
it.
So the shot went in at 25 seconds, but he probably pulls up around 28, 29 seconds, right? And it's 58-54 at that point.
And I think it was semi-contested too, wasn't it? I mean,
I thought his foot on the line. I honestly, first thought I'd have is why first of all, he's taking the shot. Second of all, why is his foot on the line? He's just taking a shot with a foot on the line, and I'm like, he's going to take the longest shot in basketball for the littlest amount of points. And no, but it did wind up being a 3. But I just, as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, oh my! I can only imagine, and you could see Eric Musselman. I don't know if anyone saw it. Like, it wasn't as he did it, but because he made it, and so I think he just kind of like, all right, I'm not going to react to this yet. But after that, like, I guess it came back down or something, and like they showed one of the replays, and behind it, like, he's not in the center, but you can look behind whoever it is that's in the center of the frame, and there is Musselman back there, and like I can't remember exactly what he did. Maybe he had his arms just up on his head or something. And I'm just thinking, I can only imagine what is going through his mind right now after watching that shot, knowing that if that does not go in, oh my goodness, I can't even. Again, I mean, because we've said, right, and I'm not harping on Chris Likes here, but he is someone that has seen his minutes go up and down a little bit at times, and we've talked about that, but. And you got to have a lot of confidence to be able to pull off that shot, because if that shot does not go in, I don't even know what people are thinking right now. But hey, it went in. Arkansas won by 8. They covered, so maybe that's what he was going for on this. That helped him cover a little bit better by hitting that 3. So
well, Chris Likes has been in the doghouse for a while now and played more than he's played in a bit. I don't know if that puts him more in favor or less in favor going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of games, he's played more minutes. He had those 2 games. He didn't play much against West Virginia, Ole Miss, or really beyond that. I'm looking at the log here. Didn't play much against A&M or South Carolina either. And even some other games, we talked about that, kind of the rotation and what Arkansas has kind of done now. But still, I think it's pretty simple. And now we started to see how things have played out. But their success is going to depend on J.D. Note and Jalen Williams. I mean, those are the 2 guys I think going the season we expected, to kind of be the 2 key guys for them. And I mean, when they play well, Arkansas just, they can be really good, and we're seeing that here in what they've been able to do. And like we said, now is where things really start to get fun for Arkansas, because you've made up ground. You've gone from 0-3 to 7-3 in the league. And now you're playing your best basketball season with Auburn coming to town. Auburn struggled a little bit on the road, which we just talked about. And then you just got so many more opportunities. You still got Tennessee coming to town. You still got Kentucky coming to town. LSU. It's just like this is Arkansas's resume could look drastically different depending on how
Yeah.
many of these if they get half of these wins the rest of the way. So let's say they go 4-3, or how many games they got left? 1, 2, 3. They got 8 games left. Let's say they go 4-4. I mean, you're looking at a top 5 seed if they go 4-4, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that
Because they're
means
what,
you're gonna.
eightish now? They're 37 in the net this morning,
And I was gonna say, because remember,
but
if
they're
you
only
get
1 in
4 of
5 quad
those,
one. Sorry.
right, and it's like, let's say you get 4 of these the rest of the way. One of them may come against Missouri, which is not going to do anything for you, but the other 3 would come against teams that are all going to be in the NCAA tournament probably. And, we're talking Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, LSU. We'll talk about LSU in a minute.
I mean, it's a
Um,
murderer's row, Blake, of what's ahead
yeah,
for
no,
them.
it is. That's what we said. It's such a drastic difference between first half and second half, but they have taken advantage of it, and I think they're in a great spot, heading into these next several games. So
Well, last year the formula for them was they got consistency out of their point guard Tate. They got it out of Moody, who ended up being Player of the Year. Or I think he won it. And now it's different, but it's been Note scoring every night. It was a little off. He was 4-16 from the field, but he's going to give you steals on the other end too, and kind of be the thing that makes you go. Jalen Williams, though, he's kind of stepped up in that supporting player. It is a double for him almost every night. He just missed it. He went 10 and 9, but the rebounding's been consistent. The scoring has stepped up for him, and so you've seen all these. Tony has been really efficient from the field all year. Wasn't as much this time, and Stanley Umude, another guy who has stepped up. So again, it's been finding guys who bring it every night in and night out, and they're getting contributions from the same guys. They were basically playing a 6-man rotation, maybe more like 8 now, depending on what they do with Johnson and Likes. They played a little bit more, but you're starting to be able to pinpoint reasons. And I guess I shouldn't say starting. We've been talking about these for a bit as to why it works for them night in and night out.
Yep, Jalen Williams, 9 straight games, double-figure scoring, 9 straight games, at least 8 rebounds. And remember, 8 of those are during this 8-game winning streak, right? So I think he's been the difference, because really he's just played so much better. Because even when he was getting rebounds early in the season, he wasn't much of a factor offensively at times. I mean, he'd score some points here or there, but he's just gotten much more consistent. And I think he's the difference maker right now for them. So
the like shot, I think it was Tom Brennan, who was the longtime coach at Vermont, that told me this. I asked some coach sometime, what's your philosophy on those, oh, no, don't shoot that, oh, yes, it just went in kind of shots? And I think it was him. It was some coach told me, I figure if the guy makes it, he's smarter than me. He knows better what kind of shot he should be taking. That's probably a little overly simplistic, but I always found that as the most amusing explanation for how a coach processes those kind of moments.
Yeah, I think whoever was on the call, the color, I don't remember who the color guy was for that. It wasn't I don't think it was the play-by-play announcer. I think it was the other guy. I don't remember who it was, but he was talking about, they'll definitely be watching that one on film. You don't say anything right now, but once you watch the film of this game, you'll be talking about that shot a little bit. So
we haven't even talked about Mississippi State.
What's there to say? Like, this team is just like,
I know it's the same thing every week, but
it's. I mean, at this point, what better sort of bet is there right now? If you're talking about a team that plays at home and plays on the road, anytime Mississippi State is at home, I think they got a great chance to win. Anytime they're on the road, they're probably going to be right there with a chance to win. But how on earth could you possibly predict for that to be the case? Like, they are just. And look, it's not like, and they're not even playing bad. That's the thing. It's like the Texas Tech game, yes, they played bad there. But for the most part, like, they're not playing bad at all. They just can't find a way to win these games. And I mean, it's like, I don't know what else to say about Mississippi State, because they are exactly what they've been, what we've been talking about with them for over a month now. Like, they're just they've got to find a way to win some of these games, and quite frankly, they just can't do it. And it's like they'll play Tennessee at home on Wednesday. They probably got a great chance to win that game. Tennessee's playing better, but Mississippi State's at home, right? So you're like, oh, probably maybe they win that one. But then they go to LSU and Alabama after that. Am I going to predict them to win those games, even with LSU reeling, Alabama reeling? Probably not, because I see what I see from this team, and right now they just can't find a way to win on the road. So yeah, it's frustrating, I'm sure, for Mississippi State fans, because you're talking about if you win one of these games somewhere in here, if you win at Kentucky, if you win at Florida, if you win at Arkansas, you're flipped. Like it's flipped
Yeah.
your sort of expectation a little bit. But now like the expectation is set, and they're just a team that cannot get over the hump. No pun intended, on the road. So
Well, they're 48 in the net. I think everybody would consider them on the wrong side of the bubble as of this
yeah,
morning. 1-5 in quad one. Really, their season, it's going to be made or broken next three, which are Tennessee, at LSU, and at Alabama. And it's one of those double-edged swords, because if you get a couple of those on the road, they help you more in the net. And let's say Mississippi State sweeps those three. Then it's a no question there in the tournament. If you end the season there, but it's back to what you said, they just can't get one on the road against anybody. And
yeah.
you just don't feel great about them going in anybody else's building right now.
I was gonna say they've still got road games against Missouri and South Carolina and A&M. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like
And those are ones that if you win, they don't really help you. You just
No,
have to have loss avoidance.
yeah. And right now, I'm probably picking Missouri to beat them at home, the way Missouri's played at home. So it's like, yeah, they've just got to win one of these road games, and I think you finally maybe push that to the side, but it's hard to ignore it right now. So
We know who won big on the road. That was Tennessee. I wasn't shocked they won. Winning by 24, I don't think most of us saw coming.
no, I thought this could be a potential upset type game. I thought it would be close, but we also said, hey, if you say that, you're banking on South Carolina, you know, maybe being a little bit better than you think they are. And I mean, it's just like, I think this is the kind of game that resets your thoughts on South Carolina, because they won three in a row, and you're thinking, all right, they got back to 500 in the SEC, then they lost to Mississippi State, which not really, as we said, we just talked about that. That's not a bad loss, but now I think this is the kind of game that's like, if you want to see sort of that gap between South Carolina and some of the other teams, now what's going to happen. I say all this, and they're going to play Tuesday. They're going to play Tuesday night and play Kentucky, and they'll have the game of their season. And all of a sudden, we'll have to reset our expectations on South Carolina again. But the thing is just this team just can't, like, they can't score consistently. There's no other way to say it. You never have any idea for South Carolina who's going to score on any given night.
No, you really don't.
And,
Right now, it's
I mean, it's take your pick. Like,
well,
it's just like,
Reese is the guy that scores for them consistently. But the problem, and we've said this all year, it's you don't know what you can get from Cousinard or Bryant, who were your best two coming into the year, and you're just not going to be able to finish above 500 in the league like that if you're Carolina.
yeah, that's just so yeah, there's plenty of frustrations there, and I'm sure we'll have more to talk about on them. But Tennessee, yeah, it was a very good performance. This is one that I think makes you feel a little bit better about where Tennessee's at. I mean, finally, Josiah Jordan-James had one of those games where you're just thinking, all right, if you can just do this every single night, like, we are going to be in really good shape. But yeah, he played well, hit outside shots, and I thought that was so important for Tennessee to make 14 threes, shoot 52% from three. I just thought that, man, that's when this team can do that, look out, because they can be really good if they're knocking down shots. You're not going to expect them to hit 14 a night, but you look at their past two games now, 14 against South Carolina, 11 against Texas A&M, and they've done it efficiently. It's not like they're shooting 35, 30, 40 a game. They're doing it efficiently in terms of the number of shots they're taking from outside. So that, to me, is the biggest kind of thing you look at for Tennessee coming out of this. If they start to make some shots from outside consistently, which they haven't been bad this year, but if they're knocking down shots like that, they've had some of those games, this season where they've really been on from three. And, I think that they can be right there. I mean, we said it. We thought they were probably the third best team going into the weekend. I think Arkansas has something to say to that now for sure. But I still look at this Tennessee team, and there's a lot to like, especially with the way they defend. And yeah, I just thought this was a great win. I know it's against a bottom four team, but just how they did it was the most impressive part.
Yeah, the Josiah Jordan James storyline was the biggest one to me coming out of that game because 20 is a career high for him, and he was a Porter Gaud kid out of South Carolina, right? I think, or
I
am
think
I
so.
mixing him up? I think he and Aaron Neesmith were teammates in high school, and
Maybe.
I believe
I
James
think
was the
that's
higher
right.
rated kid of the two. I don't think you would have thought 3 years in that 20 would be a career high, but that's where it's been. No, defensively he's been pretty good for them. But he's got 3 double-figure scoring games in a row. And with Tennessee, like I've heard the hand wringing from their fans about their offense, and I get it, and we've talked about it here too. But even as ugly as it's been for the Vols at times, they've won 5 of 6. It was darn near 6 of 6 as if a shot goes in at the buzzer at Texas. The defense has been so good, they've just needed a little something to get them over from there. And if they get this out of James every night, it's you just said it. It's a much different team. They're 14 of 27 from three. They had 5 guys hit threes. Zakai Ziegler hit 4. I think he was 4 of 5. And look, I don't think Tennessee's going to go 14 of 27 from 3 every night. But if you find a middle ground between there, where James is playing that well on offense, they can beat about anybody on any night.
Yeah, it's all about the balance. It's what we've been talking about. When they've had good wins, they've gotten balance. And yeah, when they have 4 or 5 guys that can score double figures, you're going to have a team that's very hard to beat. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them moving forward. I'm much more confident about where Tennessee is right now than maybe they were several weeks ago, especially coming off some of those games like against LSU and Kentucky and such. But they've really started to play much better, and even had their chances to win at Texas. So yeah, they're playing pretty well right now.
Okay, Vandy beats LSU by what, 10 at home? I wasn't surprised Vandy won. I felt that was kind of coming with the way LSU had played, and I'm sorry, it was 9. It was 75-66. The big story for this Vandy, Rodney Chapman, we have talked about him all year and what he means to this team. He steps up and scores 24, hits 6 3-pointers. That's not really what he does, but he gave them that on that night. I think he's probably the leader of that team. Great night for Vandy. They retired Shane Foster's jersey, who's their all-time leading scorer. I think Vandy fans came out of that one feeling a lot better. But let's talk LSU for a minute. It's point guard, man. It's a big issue for them. Pinson didn't play. Has still got the knee brace. Gaines just isn't cutting it for them. 6 assists, 16 turnovers. I mean, they're still doing really well on the net. I think they're, 16 as of this morning? Somewhere around there. But that's 6 or 7 in a row, and I don't know that this team's getting any healthier right away.
14-1 with Xavier Pinson. Let's see, or 14. I don't even count the ones he barely played. Let's not even count those. Let's go back to the start of the season.
Day he got hurt was the first week of January sometime?
Didn't play against Florida. They won that one.
I watched it happen.
Arkansas.
Yeah, he slipped on a spot on the floor against somebody.
He's played 23 minutes in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 or 9 games. 23 total minutes. And as we said, he played these last 2 games before Vanderbilt, and you could just tell he probably shouldn't be out there in terms of how he was playing. So he's the difference. I told someone that probably a month and a half ago, and they were like, are you sure? Like, is that really it? I mean, it's probably not the only thing, but I don't think you can ignore what they've looked like without him and what they look like with him.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Xavier Pinson's one of the top 5 players in the SEC, but to that team, he is as important, clearly, probably more important than anyone thought in terms of his ability to hold things together on both sides of the floor, perhaps. So I think that's it. And to me, this was the clearest example of that, because like you said, they are finding themselves in way too many of these spots now where it's like, you just don't. Look, go back to the Ole Miss game. They get down whatever it was. We said 20-something early. Kind of same thing in this one, where you get down whatever. I don't know what the biggest lead was, 20 maybe, something like that. 21.
21, and they made a 16-0 run and darn near made it interesting at the end.
Same thing they did against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing, and that's where, you know, when it's different in SEC play because you're not going to be as dominant defensively in the SEC as you were in your non-conference schedule. They played some good teams, we said, but it's a different challenge. And we've also talked about how tough their first half of their SEC schedule was. Now they're starting to get some of these games that you thought would be a little bit easier, but really they've looked, as bad against Ole Miss and Vanderbilt as they have against a lot of other teams. So I think it's that. I mean, you just have a team that's pressing on offense. I think they take some bad shots. I think that was very clear in this game. They just kind of look lost on offense at times. And I mean, I think that's it. And yes, like this is now exactly where you start worrying about LSU and kind of what they can become if they're not at full strength. And I think that's the difference. And it's no longer just enough, I think, for Darius Days to be able to carry this team or anything like that. It's just he's as we've talked about before, he's a very important player, but like you can't put him in that position to where he just has to do everything. And I think that just, that's a challenge for anyone. So, yeah, I mean, I think unless they get Xavier Pinson back, that just gives them another element that they don't have on the floor right now. And I think they would be much better in terms of just being able to do something different. And I think that's the thing is like, I'm not saying he's going to lead them to a national championship, but just having him on the floor, and I know you can point out, well, he turned the ball over a lot, but they need someone like him to at least just have the ball in his hands to get them maybe in the right spots. Because as we said, even when they had him, they were still an average offensive team. But if you take him away, I mean, it's just like they are not good on that side of the floor, and it's putting too much pressure on them defensively. Because it's interesting to think about too. In these last 6 losses, like they haven't given up more than 77 points, right? So, I mean, that sounds like a lot, but it's really not. They're still not giving up a ton of points. They just can't score because in that stretch, too, they've only scored over 68 points once. So, like, they just cannot find enough on offense. So, that's a big issue for LSU. And until they get that figured out, I think you have a lot of questions. But, on the Vanderbilt side, there's a lot to take away. You said they retired Shane Foster's jersey. But I don't think they retired Shane Foster because it looked like he was out there to me.
Yeah, he was dressed as Rodney Chapman,
wearing number 3. I mean, no one could have expected this from Chapman. I mean, like you said, he's had a couple threes here and there this year, but like he has by no means been anyone that you just expect to walk out there and go 6 of 10 from 3. But yeah, he had a lot of shots, and I mean, look, we would not be having this conversation about Vanderbilt beating a top 25 team with Scottie Pippen scoring 7 points. We would have never been able to have that conversation. But this is the difference when you have someone like him. Miles Studi played well. I mean, I thought he played really well. There was a lot of things for Vanderbilt that we've said. They're getting better. And, maybe that means this team can win a few games like this the rest of the way. They got a great opportunity coming up against Missouri on Tuesday. I think on the road, it's going to be hard to win at Tennessee or Auburn, but could they beat an Alabama at home? Sure they could.
Yeah.
Could they beat a Florida at home? Absolutely. So it's like these are the kind of games right here that can really start to swing things in the direction of, all right, we at least have some reason perhaps to be optimistic, maybe just finishing the season. And they're 4-6 in the league. I think if Vanderbilt were to somehow, I think it's going to be a challenge. But if they were to get to 500 or something in the league,
this is where I was going next. Yeah.
It's going to be a tall task. But if they were to get to 500 in the league, things get a lot more interesting for them. But again, I think it's one game. I don't want to get too overboard with it, but you can at least find some things the rest of the way now that maybe you couldn't have found even before the Kentucky game, right? Because as we said, they played pretty well at Kentucky. So I think you start to see some things here with this team, and we'll see if it plays out that way.
Okay, I'm going to give you just a long shot in the dark. And you see this happen somewhere with some team in the NCAA every year, like that nobody's talking about going into March. And for the record, I don't believe this. This is like a 3% shot at best. But Vandy's 82 in the net right now. 3-6 in quad one. And it's got the shot. I mean, it played Tennessee tough here in Nashville. Auburn on the road, that's not going to happen. But Alabama at home, winnable game. Florida at home, winnable game. Maybe in Starkville if things go right. Let's say that they end up with 6 quad one wins. And, okay, what do we have to do to get them to 500? Okay, probably most likely case, Missouri, that'd be win 5. A&M at home, that would be win number 6. Alabama at home, that's 7. Florida at home is 8. Goodness, at that point, you take out one of the Mississippis on the road.
Which is possible.
Which is possible, and there's your 9. Again, do I think it's going to happen? No. But I wonder what the net looks like in that case. Because if you're borderline, that's when the quad one wins come into play. Again, I do not think this is going to happen. But if you're just looking for some long shot play, and basically they pulled this off about 4 or 5 years ago in this same spot. Now, that was a better team with Luke Cornett. But if you're just looking for something totally off the wall to happen, there's one. And speaking of which, okay, LSU 18 in the net, which tournament ends today, or tournament starts today, they're in safely. But they're in that spot that we talked about with somebody a minute ago, where next 4 games at A&M, Mississippi State, and Georgia at home, South Carolina away.
Yeah.
Very winnable games, but under most we don't know what they are right now. And those are some games where if you lose those, you really start to get hurt. What's the chance that the wheels come off entirely and they just end up missing the tournament at season's end?
I mean, it's possible, I think, but I still think they find a way to win some of these games somewhere. I say that, though, and it's just like, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think there's a possibility.
You don't feel good
that,
about them against anybody any night right now.
No, and you're exactly right. And I think that, I don't think that's going to happen, but I think that now that possibility has set in just because they are 4-6 in the league, and they go to A&M next, which is going to be tough, I think, even with A&M having their own issues. So, yeah, I think if they beat A&M, you exhale. If they lose to A&M, then it's like, all right, now you've got some ground to make up, because you're not only reeling, but you'd be 4-7 in the league, and it's like, then you start to wonder because they've still got Kentucky, Arkansas, Alabama, those kind of games on the schedule. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of how quickly can they get Xavier Pinson back, if that happens, and then you start to wonder. But the Vanderbilt one is very intriguing to me, because I think that there is a possibility of that playing out, because this to me is starting to look like, even if it's not an NCAA tournament team, it's starting to look like an NIT team you don't want to play. But something else I'll say is we can pick apart all we want about Vanderbilt, but they've gotten better every year under Jerry Stackhouse, and I know it hasn't necessarily led to the kind of success that you would want for a program that kind of stayed in the top half of the league for a long time, but they're getting better every year, and I don't know if that means anything long-term, short-term, but I think you'd be kidding yourselves if you denied that fact that they have at least gotten better. So.
Well, I think they have to close strong for you to – because I'm on the fence with them. I'm still more pessimistic than optimistic in terms of their long-term future, but I do think that closing strong could start to sway me the other way.
Yep, I agree. It's
You talked about, and then Hale, Florida did that over the weekend. Gators won 3 in a row, survived a close one. Biggest thing in this game, Colin Castleton's back. He goes 17-7. And Florida, again, quintessential bubble team, 44 in the net, 1-5 in quad one. But I think your biggest takeaway is they survived that Castleton absence of, 3 weeks? And they're still, in fact, probably if you pick the field today, they might be bubble in. But they're right there. they're right there, and they have a shot. And I think you got to be really happy about that with them back now.
Yep, I think they'd be in if it started today. Still some potential pitfalls with Georgia twice, but for the most part, they've got a lot of good opportunities left. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest. Getting him back is huge, and like you said, they won some of those games we quite frankly didn't think they'd win. And I think that's the biggest part: to beat Mississippi State, to beat Vanderbilt, Oklahoma State rally, Missouri rally, Ole Miss rally. Like, it just this team, yeah, they're starting to play a lot better now. They get him back, and I just think that, yeah, finally Florida is kind of. I think they're going to be fine. I've said that before with Florida, and it's gone the other way. But I am way more optimistic about where they're at right now, just based on getting him back. I thought Ole Miss too actually didn't play bad at all, right? And that's another team I think is getting better. Remember, they play without Deshaun Ruffin in this one, who just went off against LSU until he got injured in that game.
Yeah.
19 points in 20 minutes. So I think still for Ole Miss, like, I think you can. I don't remember the last time we said this, to be completely honest with you, because even like I'm thinking of some of the Vanderbilt teams that have really not been great, but I think you could look at it, and aside from a team like LSU, who's probably getting worse because they don't have all their players on the floor, you could look at a lot of these teams and, like, you don't really look at any team in the league right now and say, man, they're just getting substantially worse.
No.
Georgia's getting better. Missouri's getting better. Ole Miss is getting better. South Carolina, I don't think is getting worse. I just think they kind of are what they are at this point. Vanderbilt's getting better. A&M, I don't think they're getting worse. I just think that it's evening out for A&M based on, as we said, that's kind of where they are. Alabama, I don't really, again, you wouldn't say that about them. Yeah, and then everybody towards the top half of the league is arguably getting better. So that's an interesting dynamic in this league, and I think it even goes back to where we started this discussion with Auburn and Georgia. It's like everyone's getting better. Some of these teams, if you're not getting better, you're not really getting that much worse. And I think there may be some fan bases that disagree with that, but I think you just kind of look at the trends right now, and that's kind of where things sit. So,
well, you look at the coaches in this league, and it shouldn't be a surprise, I guess.
Right. No, it shouldn't be. So, but it's an interesting dynamic nonetheless. So, yeah.
Well, I wanted to come in with a hot take of I've quit A&M, and I think in terms of the tournament I kind of have, but you look at it. Okay, they've lost 6 in a row. We pointed out the early season record, a product of the schedule, but we also saw them play and liked some things they did. We just wanted to see how it held up at tougher competition. But you know what, Blake? They've lost. As tempting it is to just sit there and trash them, for their last 6 losses, which again they've lost 6 in a row, 6 points or less, worst loss 11 points. Teams in there: Arkansas, Kentucky, LSU, Tennessee. Now Missouri's inexcusable at home. Again, that was a last-minute loss. Gosh, I watch them. They're talented, but I just think they have left themselves about that much margin for error here down the stretch. You could say they're not going to win at Auburn, but beat LSU in Florida at home, get Vandy on the road, get Georgia at home, get Ole Miss on the road, and then maybe take one of Mississippi State and Alabama.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a path. It's tough.
It's going to come through the SEC tournaments where their path's going to come through.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way they get it at this point. Because I just, again, barring them beating LSU, Auburn, Florida, I don't think they're going to win these next 3. But I think they could go 2-1. If they go 2-1, certainly if you win the Auburn one, that's much more significant. But if you win the 2 home games, let's say you beat LSU and Florida, then I think you start to, okay, now we've got a 5-game season here. If we can just not lose the ones we can't afford to lose and beat Alabama, Mississippi State, then it gets a lot more interesting going in the SEC tournament. But I think they will ultimately be a team that we look at in the SEC tournament saying they got to win a couple at least to get in. So, but we'll see. They've got some opportunities. I think it's kind of deceiving that they do still have several opportunities left in their schedule. So, but yeah, right now they can't find ways to win these close games. And shout out to Missouri. They were a team that we were just knocking a lot earlier in the season, and lost that game to UMKC and Liberty, and just blown out on the road, and getting blown out against Kansas and Illinois and Kentucky and Arkansas. But man, they're playing a lot better, and I really like the way they're playing right now. It's probably not going to mean a whole lot in terms of their postseason or anything like that, but they're getting better, and yeah, that's at least something worth pointing out with this Missouri team. So that's a nice win on the road for a team that has just been, as we said, not great on the road this season.
Well, and shout out to Kobe Brown, who's been really good night in and night out. Another good box score line. They went to him down the stretch. He delivered, got them a win on the road. So he just has been so good for them all year. I think we covered it. Anything we didn't get to worth to mention today?
No, interesting schedule this week with the games we'll talk about, but there are some very interesting matchups on the schedule coming up this week. So we'll discuss those in our next videos.
Yeah, please subscribe, tell a friend. That helps us out. Baseball stuff is coming. Meant to start our baseball content in the last week. We had a technical glitch that prevented that from happening. So if you're a baseball fan, you're really going to love us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Tuesday.